I don't think anybody is tricked into thinking that the life of a Russian soldier is all that great. But leaked interviews, including the final briefing by a Russian commander before sending his soldiers on a one-way assault, reveals just how miserable the state of the Russian military is, especially when it seems like none of them have any hope of going home. So we're going to take a look here. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this video here, but first I want to take the story back a little bit. And this is actually reposted from a Telegram account that all it does is collect some of these interviews. And this is interviews from a military recruitment center in Moscow. And this is sort of the start of the Russian soldiers' journey. Now, why do these Russian soldiers end up in Moscow? Well, the answer is that Moscow authorities actually pay a huge signing bonus. For some reason, signing up in Moscow, likely because of differences in salary, will give you a massive signing bonus. So massive that a lot of folks from rural Russia will actually go there just to get this $20,000 signing bonus. And again, imagine, right? That's a lot of money if you are signing up for the US military as an American citizen. But for a Russian, where salaries are something like a fifth of the US levels, that's the equivalent of like $150,000 signing bonus, right? And so these guys are signing a contract with the Ministry of Defense, 18 to 65-year-old men showing up, and reportedly that number has even increased after Ukrainian forces invaded Kursk, because the Russian spin machine is never going to pass up an opportunity to, well, spin the Ukrainians as the big bad guys, right? Now, the center says about 500 people show up daily, which kind of tracks, right? That would mean that about 50% of Russian recruitment is actually taking place just in Moscow recruitment centers, which again tracks because, like I said, $20,000. Okay? They interviewed one man, Ivan, a construction worker. He says, I don't really care about the war. I don't think about it. It's just some politics. It's not for me to decide, which is something you're going to see throughout this, where a lot of the Russian fighters, they seem like the kind of people who just kind of life happens to them, right? We all have kind of friends like this where they don't really embark on careers. Maybe they finish college, maybe they don't, but they just kind of languish in this holding pattern in their lives, not really building towards anything. Well, this is like a super version of this, right? It seems like they are recruiting basically aging NEETs, right? And Ivan admits in Russia, wages are low, but you can be well-educated, well-read, working, and still have no money. If I were making $2,000 a month in peacetime, I wouldn't be going to war. He says, have I voted? Yeah, a couple times. The last time I voted for Putin. Guys, there wasn't any other person you could vote for, and even he knows this, right? But he says, if I was being able to make just the U.S. equivalent of $24,000 a year, he would never be signing up for this one-way ticket to the Ukrainian front lines, right? Now, here's the thing. The government also promises you $50,000 a year for the first year of service, which, of course, the government knows they're almost never going to pay this out given the casualty rates among Russian soldiers. And the Russian military and the Russian Ministry of Defense, they know how to do math, right? So the folks that are drawing these tremendous salaries generally are more likely to be sent on these one-way missions, right? Therefore, the actual cost to them is just the signing bonus and probably a couple months of salary. So the Russian military will probably end up actually expending probably a third of that, which is still a lot. To be clear, this is still a lot, right? But when they talked to Alexander, who claimed to be the head of a timber processing company, he says, I don't have enough money for my father's cancer treatment. We've already mortgaged the house and sold the car, so I came here right away. My parents worked at a chemical plant, constantly exposed to the radiation. That might have just triggered the cancer. At this stage, the plant can just fire them. They don't keep people like that. And I think this is really interesting because it kind of illustrates what a lot of people talk about in the militaries, both in the United States and in Russia, where the military functions as a social safety net, providing safety net services that really should most developed countries would not rely on you to provide. Now, again, there's a tremendous difference, right? Serving in the U.S. military, even at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, casualties were something like 0.1%. I think even that's probably high. And I think the total number of veterans that served in Iraq and Afghanistan is around 4 or 5 million. The total dead is under 10,000. And for context, in the Russia will occur 10,000 dead probably this month. And again, we're going on year 3 of this war. So again, this is a classic sort of Russian set of circumstances. And it's also kind of sad, right? Like you would think that your dad's cancer treatment, like, I don't know. I have a kid. And if she was like, if I was terminally ill and my kid was like, I'm going to die. I'm going to go on a one-way mission into the Ukrainian front lines to pay for your cancer treatment. I'd be like, this is not parenting, dudes. This is not how this goes. I'm the old one. My time is up, right? I would never do that. And again, no, dude. Like, think of someone other than yourself. Think of your kid, dude. This ends with that mother having lost a son and a husband. That's how this ends, right? Now, obviously, they talk about that the contracts offer up to 65 years old, and that there's hundreds of men nearing retirement age. They're willing to sacrifice themselves for a chance to help their families. This has a sort of twisted nobility to it. But a paratrooper officer says that actually about 40% of conscripts are over 50. He says the new recruits are elderly. It's sad, but it's the reality. And when they asked one of these older Russians, he said, patriotic sentiments? Nah, not really. It's just that a lot of people I know have joined up and I'm tagging along. Again, this is somebody who seems to be operating, have maybe spent their whole life kind of in this passive go along to get along kind of life. He says, I understand the risks. I read about the casualties almost every day. What will I do when I come back? I don't even know if I'll make it back. I have kids, a family. This is the chef's kiss. His wife doesn't mind. So clearly, listen, this is a guy who, again, probably has spent his whole life doing nothing. Probably drinking, honestly. Maybe like playing video games. But imagine being so useless as a husband and father that your wife has no strong feelings about the difference between you staying home and you going to die in a war zone. Like, just like let that thought sink in. Okay? And when they interviewed a social worker at the recruitment center, she gave an even deeper insight. She said most of the motivation for those wanting to go to war comes from the fact they see themselves as losers. Going to war is one of the few things in life they can realistically achieve. They may have messed up, drunk their lives away, been lazy, have no family, spent years gaming, and then suddenly they're offered, do you want to play another game? You'll get money, a career, status, respect, and public attention, and you can see their eyes light up. This is actually one of the things that I talk about a lot in the military, is that one of the things that people sign up to do is to gain a level of self-respect. Most people, human beings, and I think men particularly, have a desire to be needed, right? There is something truly awesome about waking up every day and knowing that people need you, that your absence would be felt, right? And not just in a way that, like, you know, not just your parents, right? Your parents are going to love you no matter what you do, hopefully. But the fact is that having soldiers who sit there and go, man, if any one of my soldiers, when they went on leave, when we were deployed, we felt their absence, right? Their truck was short a gunner, a driver, a TC. And, you know, for 2 weeks it sucked. When soldiers would become casualties, it was a huge deal for us, right? And again, we were lucky in that our soldiers, when they became casualties, were almost always returned to duty within a week or two. So the military, in some ways, can offer people who look around their lives and say, okay, well, the gas station where I'm a cashier, they don't need me. They don't give a shit. If I left, they would just hire somebody else for $15 an hour, right? My friends don't really need me. They're fine. I don't have a spouse. I don't have kids. Nobody's like out here. I'm not needed. I'm literally an excess person. And in the military, even though there's so much about it that does like suck, you'll never feel like you're just excess, that you're not really needed, that your battle buddies don't really need you. Like, that's just not what happens. And so that's combined with a level of respect and prestige, right? It's one of the only institutions where they can pick you off the street and say, we're going to train you to do a job, potentially a very hard and difficult job. And it's one that almost everyone respects. And boy, never underestimate the lengths people will go to, again, particularly men, to get to reframe themselves away from being losers and failures and towards being people of respect and esteem. I'm telling you guys, you do not understand how powerful that drive is, especially in kind of this day and age, right? So, one of the other things they point out is that it used to be you had to be in a prison colony to get recruited, but the State Duma actually passed legislation saying that if you commit any crime and then you sign a contract with the MOD and go fight, you get absolved of that crime at any stage. You could do it when you're detained, in pretrial detention, during trial, or even in prison. Just plead guilty and then go fight and your crime will be erased. Of course, you have to survive, but half of those seeking military contracts in Moscow had previously served time in prison for various offenses. One lawyer at the Recruitment Center said, removing the stigma of being a criminal is a huge motivation. They say it themselves. I don't want my prison sentence to be a problem for my kids. What if they want to join the police? They see their past decisions as a mistake, and now they want to make things right, and right means going to war. Very interesting. Again, a very sort of paternal, a sort of weird, twisted nobility to it, right? Of course, they keep a priest on site to get recruits to confess their sins, pray, and of course, they offer free food so you can, really try to work your way past that hangover. And of course, as they point out, an increasing number of Russian soldiers killed were over 40, 50, or even 60 years old with no combat experience and no specialized training. Now, I've actually heard that this trend is reversed, that a lot more you're seeing a lot more reports of Russian soldiers who do appear to have increased training. Now, guys, if you're on the Ukrainian side, Russia has numbers to its advantage. While these soldiers lack motivation, there's a shitload of them. And that is a huge problem for the Ukrainian units looking to hold the line against Putin's assaults. But we're doing our part to help out. That's why I continue to partner with the folks at Ukraine Aid Ops. They are a U.S. registered 501c3, so they are legit. You can follow them on Instagram. You can follow them on YouTube, right? They literally post videos and images of them providing drones, drone jammers, range extenders, power stations, all the stuff that these units need to keep the Russians at bay. And right now we're raising funds for the 25th and 14th Brigades in the East. Best of all for you guys is that if we reach $100,000, I will personally deliver the drones to the units myself. So if you want to do your part and potentially score some pretty sweet patches, right? Go to donorbox.org/holding the line, or at the links in the description, right? Just look down there. All right. Huge thanks to Ukraine Aid Ops for everything they do. Okay. Now, real quick, we are going to look at a leaked speech. What happens once you've completed your perfunctory training and you're sent on your first one-way mission? Now, the YouTube censors are going to go for me now. Listen, this is just a group of soldiers who someone is talking to. There is no violence. There is no combat operations. It is just a soldier getting talked to by their commander. So please don't demonetize me. Thank you. Okay, let's take a look. Now, you can see that the service member is positioning his phone. It looks like he's trying to conceal it while he records this. Maybe he's surreptitiously recording. And you can see this is a pretty simple encampment. And the commander is providing, you can see the subtitles right down there. In fact, we're going to just mute it because, again, the subtitles. He says, have you seen the movie Penal Battalion? For not completing the mission, we shoot. We shoot for what? Doesn't matter. Fulfill your duty. They say again, fulfill your duty. When my turn comes, I'll do it too. Right? He reminds them they have an objective. And who's the best? It all depends on you. Each of you has your own head. If you go with such an attitude that you will either be killed or shelled, then why the fuck did anyone leave the prison? Okay, so basically he's saying, listen, you got to have a positive attitude, okay? You can't have this like, woe is me, we're definitely going to die attitude. But they are definitely going to die. It says, some came from civilian life. You should have stayed home. All right, well, don't pull any punches. No one forced you to come here. He says, today's Friday. You could be drinking beer. This is the least motivating speech I've literally ever heard. It's like if your goal is to demotivate somebody, these are the things you would say. I'm just saying. You guys could just be drinking, knocking back a beer. Instead, you're about to die. Like, what the actual fuck? This is just, they're just recruiting depressed people at this point. I say, you can do, it basically says, everything that happens beyond the contact line, that's your decision. You can do whatever you want. You can go, you can not go, but if you don't go, you'll be caught and we'll shoot you. How you will live after that is another question. Yeah, so literally this dude's just like, listen, you're free to do whatever you want, but we'll shoot you if you don't complete the assault. Here's what's interesting. You'll go while those Indians are being withdrawn. I think maybe he's using the term Indians for like natives, and he means Ukrainians. Right? He says, you know, they move back and forth and you know where they're hiding. To me, that implies that they know that the Ukrainians are lying in wait. Again, I think they mean natives instead of Indians. But I think it's describing actually the Ukrainian tactics, where the Ukrainians do not come out of positions and conduct assaults. The Russians are the ones who conduct assaults. The Ukrainian role is to inflict casualties and bound back. That's why he talks about them moving back and forth, right? So the Ukrainians inflict casualties, they bound back. The Russians incur more casualties as they try to push into these positions, right? He says, you know where they're hiding. You've got to like sort them out. Also, the whole like get in the car, load in the car, any car of your choice. I want to point some things out here about their gear. First off, their gear is actually somewhat improved. You can see these guys have helmets, they have plate carriers, they have mag pouches, they even have a suppressor on their weapon. So it says that at least for Russia, they're able to, they've really done a good job of equipping at least these Chinese-made gear. Again, while some of them look kind of miserable, look at this. There's another aside. If you go with this attitude that you'll be eliminated by birds, by drones, or some other fucking thing, why did you even come out here, right? Like, why are you even here if you think you're definitely going to be eliminated? Again, he's trying to say have a positive attitude, but it is the least positive attitude. And we'll jump ahead and just see, oh, here we go. And look, a Russian unit of 19 service members. This is from the 155th, eliminated by the Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region, right? As somebody points out, the 155th is being really targeted by Ukrainians because they because the 155th has perpetrated a large number of war crimes. They've killed a number of surrendering Ukrainians and POWs. They've been exposed as doing so. So the Ukrainians really are fixated on taking out these any Russians from the 155th. They say, they're heroes who were repelled. Okay, who are working in Kursk right near Suja. They gave their lives for you and me, including my husband who's in the lower left corner. I'll be proud of you to the end of my days. So there's her husband. Again, you're talking about the whole platoon being eliminated. So that is basically the end of the story here, right? So we can see that the Russian soldier's life is pretty truncated. It's short, right? Life expectancy measured in hours. It's not, but this is what happens when you have a dictatorship, right? And the commander is not wrong. Right now, Russia is not implementing a draft. There is no draft or general conscription or general mobilization. Instead, this is just a mere, this is a volunteer war. So these guys signed up for it. And at this point, you can't miss it. Undoubtedly, the Russians know what these casualties look like. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Huge thank you to our Colonel tier members, Bill Collier, Robert Colburn, Gaius Marnie, and Gina Cuesta, because, of course, it's Francis Karis, L90, and Petra Toru, as well as all of our Lieutenant tier members. Couldn't do it without you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.